Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is AshQuest, and it's time for another BWODECAST. On this episode, I'm going to be sharing the answers that you guys have given me to the question that I posed in my Discord server. And if you'd like to answer more questions of this type, all you have to do is join my Discord server. It's always free. The link is always in the description below. And just scroll on down to the BWODECAST Q&A section. The question that I posed this week was, what homebrew have you come up with since Rise of the Dreadmoon released? Using its mechanics as inspiration, what new ideas have you worked into your games? What have you play tested? Do you perhaps have new enemies that are incorporeal? And we have a few responses to that, and I'm going to go over those and talk about my own thoughts about homebrew based on Rise of the Dreadmoon's various new mechanics that it adds to the HeroQuest game. As a podcast, this is going to be very graphically, minimally intensive. Just going to be talking. You do have the visual of my talking head, but I'm not going to be having very much up on the screen. Little back look at my YouTube page. That's what I've got up, and I might as well just keep it there for now, really. So let's buckle in. This will be a great video to listen to if you are sorting through your Magic the Gathering deck, doing some cleaning, painting your miniatures, or perhaps on your way to or from work. And we'll get into the first response by Jace, who was sadly, tragically still waiting for it to arrive. His box may have been lost in Chicago. Leorlick said that he hasn't worked on it yet. But he's kicked around ideas for alternate potion decks and reagent treasure cards. Basic premise is the default deck being the basic deck, while certain combinations of reagents would allow you to draw from different decks, which have different ratios on the potions. Also, new reagents having a chance to come out as a failure rather than guaranteed potions would open up the treasure deck to neutral cards in addition to the good and bad ones it has by default. Nothing would be another example of a neutral card. The card that you draw when you are going through the treasure deck, it just says nothing. Sometimes when you're searching for treasure in HeroQuest, you get a trap. Sometimes you get a gem that's worth, 10 GP, something like that. Sometimes you're very lucky you happen across the card that gives you 500 GP. I believe that's only in the European editions of HeroQuest, though. I could be wrong about that. But sometimes you'll get a card, and I think there might only be one in the deck that says nothing. You find nothing, just no excitement, whatever. So this is a neutral example. Black Scott said he is taking the pre-release predictions and remaking the Mercs into a recurring NPC party, referring, I think, to perhaps my pre-release predictions. I really like the idea of the Mercs, in this case, the Rise of the Dreadmoon cadre, being an NPC party, somebody controlled by Zargon. There's a lot of potential for drama there. There's a lot of potential for interactions with this rival hero group, or perhaps not even rival. The dynamic can really be anything that you dream it to be, but you can have the elvish mercenary group, the cadre of the Raven's Veil, coming in to save the day as a sort of cavalry whenever you run into a particularly difficult room in the quest. It could be by design. This room could have just like a million gargoyles. Not that you have enough minis for that, unless you do, in which case I'm envious. But perhaps you open the door and it's just wall-to-wall enemies. They've all got crossbows. You've got to get through this. It's not an optional room. You need to finish this room to get to the next room, or get the treasure, or rescue the hostage, or defeat the boss character. And you begin to erupt into this fight that likely lasts more than 4 or 5 turns and starts to really wear down the party. And that's when the Zargon busts out the cadre. They come from the sides, the rear, they jump over the walls, they end up in the room, and then they begin taking out the monsters. Perhaps it's choreographed, perhaps it is all dice rolls just to add a buff. Of course, that still gives you the chance of the cadre members failing. Or, you have to start falling back on roleplay dodges. The orc rolled 3 skulls, and my cod member rolled 3 black shields, and he has only 2 BP. But he dodged. He used special ability dodge. He totally has that. You could change this up to where you have to fight the cadre members in a quest because they're not sure of your intentions. And really, success can depend on whether you lose or win those fights. You might win them, and then your heroes spare the cadre members, and then they're like, okay, well, you can't be working for Zargon then, so here you go. You must be the heroes that have been renowned for their deeds across the land. You might be able to help us. You know, they're not going to say, we might be able to help you. They're going to say, you can help us. We're the superior ones here. We know the layout of the land. We know the enemy's secrets. We have the spies. We're loyal to no one but the good of the realm. You're here to help us. That's my headcanon for those guys. But continuing on these responses before I get too far out there, Jace actually did have some ideas. Trading Peter's salt. Oh, here we go. Treasure cards. Peter's salt. In a dimly lit corner sits a small sack of Peter's salt. This salt can be poured in a room, causing all undead to flee the room on their next turn. The undead affected cannot attack while fleeing. This salt can be sold for 25 gold or traded to an alchemist for powder. So, this is a good example of an item you could probably, if possible, stockpile. It would be really useful. Definitely useful to be able to get this and just keep some of it on hand for your undead-filled rooms. Depending on what fleeing means here, maybe they leave the board. Maybe you win, you get rid of them. Or maybe they move out of the room for one turn. And then on their next turn, they come back into the room. Treasure card. Or, as you look around at the rocks, you notice a few that glint or sparkle. This ore can be sold for 25 gold or traded to any smith for shot. That's pretty cool. That's a way to get ammunition. It relies on you to have a feature where you say you have a smith. Perhaps this is just a very simple in-between quests. Whenever you have access to the armory, you also have access to a smith. The smith, perhaps, and I don't know that this is how Jace is doing it exactly. I'm reading his cards verbatim, and then I'm really just kind of taking stabs at how I would do it. The smith is able to trade certain things that you find in the dungeon that you can use as is, or you can trade them to him for utility items, or even new weapons, perhaps. Treasure card hazard. A loose beam tumbles loose and crashes down, lose 1 body point. If you're wearing a helmet, you may roll 1 combat die to try and defend. Not necessarily Dreadmoon inspired. The loose stone causes you to stumble and fall, another hazard card. Those are the hazard cards shared to me. We have a sheet of special actions. Actually, we're going to read off Jace's comment that kind of explains the context of this. Trading Peter's salt to an alchemist to mix with sulfur to make alchemist powder. So because of Dreadmoon, I'm looking to edit it. In the assumption that the reagent kit contains sulfur, therefore any hero can make alchemist powder to reload their blunderbuss, which by the way, is a very archaic shotgun of sorts. We don't use blunderbusses anymore, but they're a good way to introduce firearms in your fantasy game. They're not advanced. They're quite kabloomy, which also requires ore and or gold, and a fireplace or forge to melt it into shot, and a table to reload it, making reloading using treasure in a quest more possible. So I do believe it made these more relevant because it opens it up to the wizard and any hero with a reagent kit. Okay, so that's the context. Really good. And by the way, Jace is, if you've seen Jace post anywhere, you already know Jace is never at any sort of shortage for ideas. He's constantly coming up with pages, and I mean literal pages of ideas and suggestions. You can see Jace's comments on some of the homebrew videos I do, almost all of them, where he takes the basic concept of what I'm doing and just takes it to its logical extremes. I talked about HeroQuest in other games, and Jace went on to post how you could play HeroQuest with Sorry or Monopoly, or I think Connect 4 was in. There was just a ton. Anyway, going on to the special actions here that Jace is working on that could be changed by the Rise of the Dreadmoon expansion pack. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of stuff about the alchemy here. Distilling potions. Potions can be distilled in a room with an alchemist bench by any hero with 3 or more mind points. It takes 1 action. To distill a random healing potion, D6, roll a combat die to determine quality. Skull is a minor healing. Hero Shield is healing, and Evil Shield is a major healing. And this is +2, +4, +6 body points, respectively. An elf, cleric, or alchemist may distill any potion into a healing potion. To distill any non-healing potion, roll a combat die to determine properties. Skull is a random healing potion. Just roll a d6. Hero Shield is a potion of defense. Evil Shield is a potion of strength. And a dwarf, wizard, or alchemist may choose to distill any potion this way. Mixing powders. Powders can be mixed in a room with an alchemist bench by any dwarf or alchemist. It takes 1 action. Alchemist powder. Needs salt. Difficulty level 5. We don't know what the difficulty levels are. We might get that from the context here. Yeah, there it is. Roll 1 red die per mind point and meet or exceed the difficulty level. Okay. I like that. Reload. Needs shot and powder. Difficulty level 6. Same rules. There is picking locks, and there is forging. I think that those aren't necessarily Dreadmoon related, but I do like the reagent kit ideas, the mixing powders. I like that stuff a lot. I like distilling. I like being able to utilize the furniture that's on the board. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And I know that Advanced HeroQuest has a set of suggestions for utilizing the furniture if you can bring it in from HeroQuest, and it gives it a bit more of a role play context for that game. I like that stuff a lot. So maybe, Jay says, I will simplify everything to allow anyone with a reagent kit to distill. It will clean it up and replace the restriction with a 400 gold pieces hurdle. So yeah, it makes sense because of the price of the reagent kit. Makes sense. I like that. It makes it cleaner. Jace also added statues to his furniture list. He's got his own set of rules apparently for interacting with furniture. The searcher rolls 1d6. While searching the statue, you discover. Well, if you roll a 1, draw a treasure card. And if it's a wandering monster card, the statue comes to life and it counts as a gargoyle. So you know immediately you have a, 16.666 chance when you enter a room with a statue that if the quest book does not specify a treasure in particular to get, that it's going to be a gargoyle. That sucks. It's really less of a chance than that. I mean, it's quite a bit less of a chance than that. It's not that every single treasure card you draw is a wandering monster, so it's less than 16%. There's a 16% chance for it to begin to come a gargoyle. There's actually more possibilities that might lead into that here, actually. Let's continue reading. If you roll a 2 when you search a statue, the stony figure holds a metal sword. You may attempt to pull it free or pry it free. Now we're going into a subroutine. Roll 2d6 to attempt to remove it. If you roll a 12, the statue crumbles and the statue and sword are broken. If you roll less than your body points, you were able to pull it free. If less than your mind points, you were able to pry it free. Now I don't see what the difference is between those two actions. And we don't have consequences for what happens if you roll more, so I would just say you fail, you don't get the sword. I don't see what kind of sword it is either. It's just metal sword. Perhaps we roll for that. If the statue holds a shield, or rather if you roll a 3, the statue holds a shield, you may attempt to yank it loose or dislodge it. We get the same set of rules as we did with the sword. And if you roll a 4, in a secret compartment in the pedestal, you find a random spell scroll. If you Roll a 5. Around the statue, you see coins littered about. Receive 2d6 gold. If a pair of 1s is rolled, the statue comes to life. It counts as a gargoyle. Damn it! Gargoyles! 6. You find nothing of value, but feel compelled to leave an offering of 1d6 gold. Wow. So if you roll a 6, you actually just lose gold. So I like this. I wouldn't give it a gargoyle stats. It's obviously a statue that's coming to life, but I still wouldn't give it a gargoyle stats. The gargoyle is it takes on the appearance in the classic HeroQuest as a corn bloodthirster. The gargoyles are serious. They are dangerous. They are monsters that have been made for battle. They are made to follow the will of Zargon. I guess it's possible that these new gargoyles, there's not any real lore about what a gargoyle is. And I like it that way. But it lets us imagine that they could take on any appearance. They could be made to be anything. So somebody could conceivably, it's very possible somebody could make them in the image of the statues on the plinths that come with Rise of the Dread Moon. So, I mean, just because it doesn't look like a nasty, terrible monster doesn't mean it couldn't have the stats of one. I just, when I read this, I don't think of it being a gargoyle incognito. I think of it being a statue that comes to life and attacks, rather than a born-to-be gargoyle, a created to attack heroes type thing. So as such, I would probably make it a bit weaker myself. Jace also posts a video where he is kit bashing his miniatures from Rise of the Dread Moon. He cuts the female statue off her plinth, makes a couple of modifications to the base of the plinth, the top where the statue sits, and then is able to fit any of the other miniatures with their circular bases onto the plinth. I think that's a really cool idea, and he demonstrates it using a knight and the Magus guard, and I think that those were great examples. I can't bear to cut into any of my miniatures that come with my stuff. I just have this built-in governor that's like, you can't do that. I order spares. I go and find things on eBay that allow me to do kit bashing. I don't think I've ever taken apart any HeroQuest miniature. I don't think I've cut into any HeroQuest miniature. I've definitely cut into other miniatures. Games Workshop. I've cut bases off of Skaven, the little Slotta bases that come with the advanced HeroQuest Skaven, as well as other Skaven. I've taken and filed off the little peg that's on the base of some of the specialty Skaven metal miniatures, like the Rat Ogre, just so that I could flatly place that miniature onto a HeroQuest styled base. And in the Rat Ogre's case, I believe I have him on a double-sized base, one of those 2-tile ones. It seems like an obvious thing, right? But the idea being, make the monster look like it comes with HeroQuest. Make the monster look like a HeroQuest monster, more than whatever other game it's from. You can do this with any Games Workshop monster for the Classic Edition. For contemporary HeroQuest, I don't think that I want to go out and get any monsters to add to it, but I've been thinking about acquiring Skaven. New edition Skaven, if I can get them. If I can get them in plastic on circular bases, I might have Skaven in my new HeroQuest. I would really like to do that, actually. I would love to have just the whole gamut, the whole spectrum of the various roles that the Skaven have. So just basically a Citadel Warhammer Fantasy army of them. Ogres included. I love the concept of the Rat Ogres very much. As far as my own interpretations of Rise of the Dread Moon, we'll get into where I think it really toes the line for simplicity in HeroQuest. Not in this video, but in an upcoming one. I'd like to actually talk about that with other people. So that's going to be reserved for a guest show. And I have a short list of people already that I'm reaching out to. So if you're interested, join the Discord below. That's likely where any sort of interview or podcast style stuff would take place. And let me know, and then just hang around, and let's see how we vibe to begin with. But I do have a short list of people that I'm going to be reaching out to and trying to get on to the show here. Treat it like a real show. And that's one of the topics I want to talk about. How HeroQuest is Rise of the Dreadmoon. Seen a lot of positivity about it knocking it out of the park, but I want to pay attention to the other commentary as well. I want to pay attention to the spectrum of commentary, because nobody's opinion, nobody's perspective is invalid here on Ash Quest. If you don't like something for a reason, what is that reason? I want to know. As far as my own homebrew systems go, I think that it's a pretty HeroQuest feeling way to collect reagents in a dungeon. HeroQuest feeling way to craft. I like that. I like collecting the reagents instead of treasure in a dungeon. I think the reagents, they could very well have been mixed in with the treasure deck instead of the alchemy deck. And I think that's how classic HeroQuest might have done it. Not that I'm gonna compare these mechanics to a ghost of a game. I just think that's the mindset the classic one would have been in. The creators probably would have done it in a sort of messy fashion, I believe. It would have really made for some bloated treasure decks, and perhaps not as exciting when you do a treasure search, though. Instead of a wandering monster or 500 gold pieces, you find, a leaf or a sprig or a branch or something of that nature. So maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm wrong. Second guessing myself on this imaginary 30-year prior hypothetical crafting game mechanic. I'm not sure. I guess you could probably search very specific things to find reagents, and Zargon would have to place those specific things in the dungeon. So you'd have to rely on the quest design to provide for you these things, instead of it being a fundamental mechanic in the game. But if you can find these things, whatever it is, maybe it is the alchemist bench, maybe your wizard or whoever is authorized to do crafting or searching for reagents to begin with is able to utilize this piece of furniture. And that's really fun, because that makes all of the current content that is available able to be retroactively changed if you want it to be. You can replay this stuff now, and now your heroes know that they can search a bench for potion ingredients. The actual crafting, I like Rise of the Dreadmoon's way of doing it. I wouldn't change it. I think everything's fine. My table and I are going to play this as it was intended to be played. I'm not going to make any homebrew changes for my first run of the campaign. But how I probably would have done it is kind of the same way Jace is doing it. I'd have it done between quests, and I'd have some quests where they're so close in succession that you don't have access to the means to create new things. I'd probably do it that way, where, okay, now you are in between quests, you're at an armory, you can go to the armory, you can buy weapons, you can buy crossbows, shields, armor, or you could do both, I don't care. You could go to the alchemist. We do have the alchemist shop in the expansions. They do offer things. Each expansion seems to have its own little set of things that it offers. I would say this is the perfect opportunity to trade your reagents in. And the reagents could be combined to make things. It could be a 1-to-1. It could be that multiple things, just a whole ingredient list become one thing. and you have a couple of really high value items that could show up in like the last quest for each campaign. And these high value items, there's only one per campaign. Perhaps they go into something that heals all body points and mind points of the hero upon consumption. It makes for a great sort of reward. But then again, that kind of keeps you from using it in the same campaign. So maybe these ingredients have a chance to spawn in any quest, or maybe the quest just prior to the last quest, perhaps 2 quests prior, give you a little bit of opportunity to at least use it up before you get to the boss even. And it could also be possible that this single ingredient that's so rare, if you acquire it, you're able to create a potion after the campaign that allows you to permanently increase one of your body points or mind points. That would be the real end goal, I think, is to make permanent modifications to your hero. That there's no more rewarding way to augment your hero. I mean, you could get a piece of equipment that increases your attack dice by 2 or 3, and that's pretty cool. I suppose it's kind of the same concept. You're just trying to keep your hero alive as long as possible. But that's one of the things I would think of doing. The hideout tile is really cool. The situational mechanics that it offers are interesting. I kind of like that. I don't really know how I feel about it needing to be a part of the quest. There's not going to be one of these hideout rooms in every quest that you play. And there's going to be a lot of settings where a hideout room is not really appropriate. You might have to investigate a tomb, catacombs, crypt, the enemy castle. And the context of the hideout room is that there's folks who are on the hero's side, and they have this room, this safe room. You could make the same thing in your game, of course, even in these settings, but it would have to be called something else, and it would have to look like something else other than what it looks like. Something it's safe in here. The heroes have the ability to barricade all of the doors, and you can take the hero quest equivalent of a short rest. That I could see this tile being used for in homebrew. But it would be nicer to have the tile change in appearance. So this kind of segues into, well, I guess I'll just add safe rooms to my game. I won't worry about the appearance of the tile at all. The tile doesn't even need to be laid down. I can simply announce when the heroes enter the room, you've arrived in a safe room. You can spend an action barricading all the exits, and then you guys can agree on what your actions are going to be while you're in this room in the short time that you have. That's the way that my brain works. The more vague and accessible we can make it, the better, I feel. And then you don't have to worry about the safe room being any particular size. I know the tile is a very exacting size. It's a specific size, but you could make any room on the HeroQuest board a safe room if you do it that way. You could make the little 2x3 rooms, the blue ones in the southwest quadrant, safe rooms. Just one of them. You don't have a lot of room in there. It's going to be really humid. If the dwarf passes gas, the entire room's going to die. But what kinds of mechanics you offer can also be relegated to die rolls there as well, utilizing the skull shield, black shield convention. I'd have to think of something that I would prefer to do, but you have so much potential to do different things there. Then we have the disguises. I've heard complaints about the disguises, and again, I won't go into the criticisms here. I'm just going to say that I get it. I definitely get it. I'm not going to change it in my inaugural campaign when I'm playing, but the disguises are not my favorite part of the expansion. I'll just say that. And I don't think that I would use disguises in my homebrew. Not the way that they're presented in Rise of the Dreadmoon. There are stealth mechanics that I would present, for sure. For sure. Subterfuge being the goal. Stealth mechanics, sneaky attacks, ways to take out the enemy before they know what's even going on, or completely go around them. Going around them is not heroic, but you may have some enemies that you introduce that are not beatable. They're just not. You have an invincible enemy, something like the Witch Lord. You've got to come back to defeat them. But for now, you've just got to avoid them because there's nothing that you have that can destroy them. That's the sort of thing that I would think about doing instead of disguises. And I do want to come up with a couple of things because I have my own campaigns that I need to work out that have these different mechanics, and stealth is very much facilitated for these campaigns. It would be a really great idea to have stealth in them. And certainly some unbeatable monsters to switch things up a bit. That is actually time for me though, guys. I hope you enjoyed listening to this. Comment anything you like down below. Please consider joining the Amalgam Archive Discord and letting me know your thoughts in the BWODECAST Q&A. And I do really hope that you like this format. It is a lot less editing. It's a lot more candid. And it does feature a lot of me just segueing into different little random topics here and there while I'm trying to focus on the main message. Let me know what you're doing right now. What are you doing while listening to this? And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Guys, thanks again. Onward, brave heroes.